Hey guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. So today I would like to discuss a very commonly asked question that I have faced, which is it better to live in Canada or better to live in Australia? It's pretty much like a comparison between these two countries, right? So my goal of today's video would be, let's just have a discussion. And as I always say to you guys, feel free to drop your lines, drop me your thoughts and what do you think and from your personal experience in the comment section, so we all can learn from each other. So I would like to probably have like 6 different parts in this video. So number 1, why is this question? Why do I get this question pretty frequently, actually? Secondly, who is this question for? Right. So, what type of people normally ask this question, and who should have the benefit, from a discussion like this? Thirdly, I would probably share some stats with you guys, which you guys obviously can find online in various different places, where you can compare city versus city or country versus country. And number 4 would be my personal experience, and then I would be explaining or discussing about what should be considered. And lastly, how can you make your decision, right? So hear me out. I would really appreciate if you actually listen the entire video, watch the entire video, obviously. That would make much more sense. I guess I would be able to connect a lot more with you guys with that, rather than if you skip to the end of the video, because it's pretty difficult and tricky topic and question. So let's see if we can establish any conclusion, or maybe it will still be an open-ended discussion. Right. So firstly, why is this question? So this question is number 1 reason that I get this question asked a lot is globalization, right? Which means obviously immigration, migration, whatever you say. People normally, when they would like to move out of their their home countries, the most popular, or in the top of the list, you will have Canada, you will have Australia, of course you will have UK and USA, Germany, other European countries and whatnot. Maybe these days actually things change. A lot of people want to go to Turkey. A lot of people want to go to some other countries as well. So because I know a lot of people, I have a pretty big network, and they all know that I've been to both the countries, and I actually lived for a long time. Australia, I've lived for a very, very long time, and I also spent a few years in Canada. So a pretty obvious question is, to have a comparison, or to give them, I guess, a comparison, or to give them my insight from my experience, so that they can actually come to any conclusion or get some sort of direction from me. So that leads me to the point number 2, which is what type of people normally ask this question. What's the motivation behind this, right? What is the motivation behind the question? So there are two groups. So number 1, there's just generally asking you the question, right? So I'm not gonna get into details of that group. When they hear, oh, so you've been into 2 countries, okay, so which one do you prefer? Which one do you find better? Or some people maybe ask in a specific question, in terms of quality of life, which one is better? In terms of education, which one is better? In terms of settling down with family, which one is better? In terms of work or business, whatever it is, right? Like a general, very casual conversation. So that one group. The another group, which is a little bit more serious, and that actually becomes a little bit less casual. because they ask the question because either they're planning to go to either of these countries, or they already have planned and they've already made their mind that they're going to settle down in Canada or Australia, or probably they're asking this question for someone else that they know, or their friends or family members, right? So their question mainly around education, number one, and number two is to be able to settle down with family or raise kids, which country would be better, right? As I said, these people, they normally are those people who already are planning or in the process, or thinking about it to migrate to either of these countries. These are the two categories of people who normally ask me this question, and I'm pretty sure that whoever you guys are actually watching this video, if you are also in the same situation, you guys also get asked this question a lot, right? Then I'm gonna share some stats, right? If you go online, obviously you can search Canada versus Australia. And also another thing to clarify in here, very, very important, this is very, very important, probably one of the most important thing to mention in this video would be, it's not about Canada versus Australia, because both Canada and Australia, they're massive countries, right? Both of them, they're pretty big countries. You have territories, you have provinces, right? It's huge countries. So when I say Canada versus Australia, so one disclaimer, one thing to actually mention right now is, in terms of Australia, I lived in Sydney. In terms of Canada, I lived in Toronto, right? Toronto, Mississauga, or Greater Toronto area, which is GTA. So when I'm sharing my experience and every bit of information that I am sharing, it is purely based on these two part of these two countries, right? It is not the entire Canada, it is not the entire Australia. Keep this in mind. This is very, very important. Some people might get a wrong message, but I just want to clarify before I deep dive that it is not about entire Canada. I didn't live in entire Canada. I didn't live in entire Australia. I didn't live in every single province, every single town, every single cities, right? And so this is just something to clarify that I'm actually comparing. Technically, it's not Canada versus Australia. It is technically Sydney versus Toronto, if that makes sense to you, right? And beside these two cities, these two cities are top of the top amazing cities. In Australia, you have Perth, you have Melbourne, you have Brisbane, you have other cities as well. In Canada, you have, what do you have? You have Vancouver, you have many other cities you have. So I am not comparing the entire country with another country. I am comparing literally a very small part of the countries, right? Very important, but very small. So I am no way that I would be feeling comfortable if I just say I'm actually comparing and giving you guys the information in terms of a comparison or my experience or my insight in terms of the whole country versus another whole country, right? So let's get back to the point now, as I've clarified this. So I'm going to share some stats, right? If you go and search, Toronto versus Sydney, because majority of the people, again, hear me out, majority of the people, not all, majority of the people, if they think about Australia, Sydney, Melbourne probably be the number two, number one and number two, and out of these two, probably Sydney would be still number one. Same goes for Canada. If you think about Canada, the first thing comes to your mind is Toronto, right? You want to be in Toronto or somewhere around Toronto, or as I mentioned before, GTA, right? The greater Toronto area. So if you go and search online, Toronto versus Sydney, these are the few things you will find out, and I will clarify, because these information that you will find out, and what I will be actually mentioning right now, these are actually very subjective, right? So you have to take it with a grain of salt. So first few things, and this is, I will try to have this on the screen or I will give the link or few links actually in the description, if I can, so that it'll be helpful for you guys to actually see where did I get this information from. Or you can just feel free to go online and search. There are a few good websites actually. You can go and do the lookup, and you can find a lot of stat-based information. Okay, so average net salary, right? So the source that I got this information from, they're saying internal, and all these dollars are actually in USD. So internal, your average net salary about $3,000 USD, and in Sydney it's about 3,900, so almost 4. So you can see internal, let's round it up around 3,000. In Sydney, round it up, let's say around 4,000, right? Monthly salary. So 3,000 versus 4,000. I'm not gonna mention anything right now. I'm just gonna give you the stat, but then I will come to this to clarify a few things, right, from my experience. Purchasing power, in terms of purchasing power, internal is about 16% lower than Sydney. Consumer price, internal is 15.3% lower than Sydney, which is good. Consumer price lower means, well, for people like us, it's obviously good. Grocery price internal is actually about 16% lower than Sydney, right? Restaurant price also lower or cheaper internal compared to Sydney. Rent also cheaper internal compared to Sydney. They're saying about 16.19% lower compared to Sydney. Basic utilities internal. Again, Toronto is cheaper. They're saying about $113 versus in Sydney $143. Fuel per liter, Toronto about 88 cents versus Sydney about $1.07. Leisure and entertainment, again, Toronto is cheaper compared to Sydney. So you can pretty much see I have tried to touch all the points. So you got your income, which is obviously Toronto is lower than compared to Sydney, and all other expenses, all the expenditures actually, Toronto is cheaper compared to Sydney. So let's get back to the salary part, right? As I mentioned, in Toronto it's about monthly USD 3,000 versus Sydney 4,000. It means nothing, to be honest. It means nothing. This is a purely stats, right? A pure statistics. They probably did a test on the random size of population, find out what's the salary, and did the math and come to this conclusion. I agree somewhat, right? It is not completely garbage, so it is somewhat true. Yes. Generally, salaries in Sydney are actually higher than Toronto. Say, for example, you're a finance officer, right? Or you're an accountant, or you are, I don't know, whatever role it is, right? In Sydney, you'll always find it is little. If you compare role versus role, you'll see Sydney you can earn a little bit more, salary-wise, right? Your salary would be higher, maybe 5,000, maybe 10,000 yearly salary, obviously. But then again, it means nothing. Because why I said that? Because you guys understand. It depends on many things, right? You can negotiate. If you're in Toronto, it doesn't mean that is like by default that is the role. In some cases, maybe salaries in Toronto is actually higher than Sydney. In some cases, maybe you have negotiated with the employer, right? In some cases, probably you have other benefits, because salary is not the only component of your whole benefits, right? Benefits and remuneration. You have other facilities. You have medical. You have insurance. You have reimbursement. You have many other things. So, just an example: in Sydney, you might get 50,000, and then nothing else. But in Toronto, you might get 40,000 plus. You get other benefits. So you need to take the whole thing into consideration, right? But overall, as I was saying, if you just look at the salary versus salary, right? Sydney generally is higher. Again, that doesn't mean it is by default. You'll always see this happening. I'm just saying, overall, you will see, if you just look at the salary, if you just look at the role versus role, Sydney will pay you more in terms of salary. Then come to the expenditure, right, which is the other side. So as I've already mentioned, things are cheaper. Things are cheaper in Toronto, right? So I'm not going to go through all of the things. Yes, in Sydney, for two people, if you go sit down in a restaurant, you might spend $50. In Toronto, you might spend $20. Again, depends on the scenario, depends on the situation, circumstances, depends on the actual restaurant, what type of movie you want to watch, if it's 3D, if it's normal movie, what type of leisure and entertainment you want to enjoy, where do you want to go, what type of lifestyle you want to live. It so many variables, right? You understand. I hope you understand. But overall things are a little bit cheaper. So let's draw a conclusion in here. So your income, let's just say your income is higher in Sydney, so therefore obviously your expenditure is also following that. So that is also higher compared to Toronto, because in Toronto your salary is actually lower than Sydney. Now all these things, I'm gonna probably make a very bold and strong statement. Then again, take this as just a direction but nothing else. So after your income, like your salary, I'm not talking about any benefits, because it's a massive area to talk about. If we just look at the salary and all other expenditures, end of the day, end of the month, end of the year, and also taxes, right? So tax is very different in Canada, in my experience. I'll get back to that later on. So overall, like, how much money, after all the expenses, how much money do you have in Sydney and how much money do you have in Canada? Generally, it to you probably it means nothing, right? Because everyone's scenario is different, everyone's situation is different. Overall, in terms of the stats, as whatever I have mentioned, in Toronto, you might be able to save a little bit more money than Sydney. Again, hear me out, it depends completely on your lifestyle, the way you want to live, the way you want to splash your money, the way you would like to live your life. So many things you can do. So it depends on many things, but if I just look at the very generic, normal, and take everything as like a black and white, if I do the math, and also from my experience, you'll probably have a little bit more money in your hand end of the day, or end of the month, end of the year, as you can understand. Okay, so far looks all good, but do not come to any conclusion. Okay, now there are a few things. So this would be so let me share my experience, my personal experience. So in my personal experience, I lived in Mississauga, Toronto area, right, which is a part of that GTA, Greater Toronto area. And also in Sydney, I lived in Sydney, quite a few places, Inner West, City, and nearby areas. So you can call it Sydney. In my experience, in terms, beside income and expenditures, and how much money you can have into the day, how much dollar you can save, you can have in your pocket. Beside all of this, if I just talk about the quality of life, the social experience, the socio-economical situation, human interaction, weather, and that opportunity of long-term vision to be able to settle down with kids, family. So overall, all this, if I sort of summarize everything, so in my experience, to me, again, this is purely based on my personal experience, I would probably prefer Canada over Australia. Again, sorry, it's not Canada over Australia, it is Toronto over Sydney. Right, Toronto over Sydney. I would probably prefer Toronto. It is purely based on my experience. That's it, nothing else. Also, another thing to point out in here is I lived in Australia or in Sydney more than Toronto. So I lived a longer time in Sydney compared to Toronto. But beside all of this, my personal experience, based on my personal experience, I would still prefer Toronto over Sydney. Why? It's purely because few factors, right? I and myself and my family, we love cooler weather. We love snows, and cold. So that's one of the factor. Obviously, in Canada, if you live in the west side, if you live in the Vancouver, British Columbia, that side of the Canada, then the temperature and the weather is very different. So anyway, so weather was one of the factor, and we really enjoyed. Quality of life. As we have kids, we found it very easy, and I guess we found it very good. To in terms of parks and playgrounds and activities for kids in Toronto area. So that's another thing as well. Public transportation is very good. Houses, apartments, pretty good as well. So all in all, I found it. I found that Toronto will have a little bit of edge over, or a little bit of more preference from my side over Sydney. Now, having said that, I have nothing against Sydney. I have spent amazing time in Sydney. I do not have, almost I don't have much, a negative experience or, anything that that can make me biased. So overall, being a very, if I do a very fair, unbiased comparison from my personal experience, I'll probably, would love to see myself in Toronto for a longer time. So now, that leads me to point number 5, which is what you should consider. What should be considered, right? So I think you already understood from my explanation that one of the things you need to understand is the weather. Many people actually don't do very good in the warm weather, and many people don't do very good in the colder weather. So you need to understand, where do you want to go? Do you feel comfortable living in a warmer weather? If that is the case, then Australia will probably be the best option for you. If you prefer a cooler weather, and when I say cooler, and also when I say warmer, means it can go 40 plus 45 degrees Celsius. Summer can be very brutal in Australia. Also, same goes for Canada. The winter can be very brutal, right? You might have minus 25 degrees Celsius, minus 30 degrees Celsius. So keep that in mind before you make any decision. Before you become super excited about any of these countries, you need to understand about their weather, because other things almost in your hand, right? If you want to, I guess, switch a job, if you want to do something else, you have that option. Weather is something that you don't have any control over, right? So if you go in, and if it's snowing, if you feel it is super cold, you don't have a switch to turn it off and make it something else, right? So weather is one of the very important thing. Secondly, you also need to understand what would you be doing either in Canada or in Australia, right? Or to be precise, in Canada, in Toronto or in Sydney. It can be, you need to think about your profession, you need to think about your business. You also need to think about your, size of your family. Is it by yourself? Is it, you and your wife or your partner? Or is it, with your kids or even extended family, right? So you need to understand that as well. You need to find out other facilities as well, right? Universities, schools, all of these aspects. You also need to understand your cultural background or your spiritual background, right? So you need to consider all of these elements first, and then you probably be able to make a decision which one to actually consider. Again, both the countries, they're neck to neck, right? They're genuinely pretty similar. They're very multicultural. You pretty much will have access to everything, but then again you need to understand your situation. And yeah, and as I said, one of the major different, one of the major key thing is the weather, obviously. You need to understand which one actually is suitable for you and your family, if you consider your family also with you in that regards. Okay, so lastly, your decision. Right? What should be your decision? Your decision is neither, or probably both, which obviously not true. But what I mean by saying that is, your decision should be purely based on you. Yes, in Toronto, things are a little bit cheaper, and cheaper not obviously not in a bad way, but things are, a pair of jeans probably in Toronto $20, in Sydney probably $50. Same brand, same thing. Obviously, due to the back end, the supply chain, the logistics, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that $20 jeans is a poor quality, compared to $50 jeans. But all in all, what I wanted to mention is, yes, don't get excited just to look at the stats. Right? Don't go to Google and do a comparison Toronto versus Sydney, and you see, oh, everything looks cheaper in Toronto, or the housing, the rent, entertainment, utilities, all the bills, everything looks very, 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 very cheap. And you do a math in your mind, and you think, oh, you know what, let's just go to Toronto because I think the life would be better. Because why? Because whatever I will be earning, I'll be able to save a lot more. Well, not necessarily it can be true, right? As I mentioned to you, there are so many factors, so many variables I need to understand as well, right? One of the things I haven't actually touched at all is tax. So anyway, so that should be one of the things to actually understand and I guess think about. Another thing is your vision. So how long you would like to stay in Canada, or how long you would like to stay in Australia. Is it a short time, like 2 years and 5 years, and then you move out of that country, or is it a long-term plan, or is it a plan that you would like to stay there and apply for citizenship and sort of like settle down? So you need to understand all of those aspects as well, and you also need to understand your family dynamics, right? Will it be just yourself and your partner and your kids, and or your parents, your partner's parents, and what the entire goal, right? What would be your goal, and what would be, and in some cases maybe there are some obligations to if you want to if you want to say, for example, if you want to bring your parents, there might be definitely there are some obligations. So one might be a little bit easier than the other one. Whichever one is suitable for you, you need to also take that into consideration as well. About kids, again, their education system, what do you actually prefer, so you need to also understand that as well. And I also said about your cultural background, if you would like to have people from your your same cultural background or spiritual background, if you see that that's much more accessible in Toronto, then obviously that's a tick for Toronto. And if you see that much more accessible in Sydney, then obviously that's a tick for Sydney. So after considering all of this, only then I guess you can come to a conclusion. Neither myself nor Google can give you the answer that which one is good or which one is better than compared to other one. You can look at some stats. You can obviously have watched my video. I hope you have watched the entire video. I hope I was not super boring, even though I am, but I guess you'd understand. And or you watch some other YouTube videos. No one would be able to satisfy all of the questions, all of the things that are going through your mind. It is only you who can make the decision that which place would be good for you. Again, all of these resources, whether it's my video or Google or the websites that I mentioned in the beginning, that they show you the comparison. All of these resources are there to just facilitate and give you some sort of direction. but definitely not to draw the conclusion for you. So that's it. That's pretty much all I have today to explain or to discuss with you guys. And if you have any specific question, I know I was a little bit generic, and I was thinking though whether I should make very specific topic by topic sort of like a lengthy video, or keep it generic and give you guys some sort of direction so you guys can take some information out of it and do your bit. So again, if you have any specific question, please let me know in the comment section, so I would try to answer them. Yeah, if you like this video, again, I don't like to normally say this, but if you like this video, give it a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, because all of these actually apparently help. Apparently all of these things actually help the YouTube algorithm to be happy about my video, right? So that's it for today, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.